my friends, it's your old pal Jordan the Lion. How are you all doing today? I hope you said well. We're gonna have a blast today. What I want to do today is something that takes me back to when I was a little kid. I loved the Dukes of HAZZARD. I loved that car. I loved seeing the car jump and be chased and go flying through the air. I loved Boss Hogg, Roscoe P. Coltrane. I just loved the whole crew. And today we're going back to where it all started. They started filming originally when the show came out in Covington, Georgia and the surrounding area. So I found an episode from the first season before they moved to Hollywood. Literally the show, just after a few episodes, they decided to move production out to Los Angeles. So we're gonna go and do the episode High Octane today, which is great. Basically what happens in it, well, I'll save it for the vlog. Daze with Jordan the Lion, it begins right now. That's just a little bit more than the law would allow. So here we are out here for our very first shot. I mean, literally our first shot for the vlog and our first shot of the episode. You get a great one because, as you know, most episodes, or almost all the episodes, started out with the balladeer, the great Waylon Jennings, one of my favorite people of all time, opening up the episode, and he mentions that the boys are out having some fun first thing in the morning, and you see a semi parked right here with like hay bales on it, and the very first thing when the music starts you see is that General Lee come flying right over top, right where that car came out, and it comes crash landing right down here. I mean, it doesn't get destroyed or anything, but they come out there, and Waylon Jennings makes a comment of wonder what's going on because it's too early to be out chasing girls. And then you see their car just go bolting down this street. That was always so exciting for me because I loved the General Lee, and I just loved that, you know, that was something they just incorporated into every episode, were those jumps, and they just got more and more dynamic. And they had several cars, obviously. They had countless, I mean, I think over 100 cars in all that they would use to film these kinds of scenes, because they would destroy enough of the car, or maybe not destroy the car completely, so they would fix it up as much as they had to use it for another scene. And sometimes it wasn't even a 69 Charger, it would be a 70 or a 71 or anything that could just pass for it. But I love seeing one of the momentous shots where that General Lee comes flying right over top of that semi right here. Now, where are they going, you might ask? Well, they gotta go check in at court. They have a quarterly check-in, and so that's where we're headed to. We're headed to downtown Covington, Georgia. And if you look, as they're flying over, they do kind of like a jump back shot where you can see a little bit more, a little bit wider shot, and you can see the marathon station that I'm doing this from. You can see their little sign there in the corner. Yeehaw! I can definitely see why they like to film out here. Lots of open roads. So imagine we're in that 1969 General Lee Charger heading to check in with the revenue agent, Andy Roach. So our first shot here in Covington is we see the General Lee coming the wrong way, coming towards us, flying. I mean, this thing is going fast, and it whips around here and goes up to that courthouse up there where it ends up parking to meet Uncle Jesse. But you can definitely tell this has not changed in the slightest. The camera would have actually been probably over here and up at an angle looking down, but you can definitely see them making their way all the way around this. So we see the General Lee flying out through here, and we see Roscoe's white sheriff car coming out from here, seeing them, and it eventually follows down to the courthouse as well. Here I'm noticing a couple of little markings on the sidewalk here. One is for a council member, then the other is for Denzel Washington movie Flight. Lots of movies, TV shows filmed here. In fact, as we walk over here, right next to the courthouse, this Mystic Grill, that is in Vampire Diaries. So they end up actually parking right over there where that white car is. So let's go over there. So our first shot over here of anything at all is Uncle Jesse. We have a shot looking up at Uncle Jesse right here. He's waiting on the Duke boys. They're all supposed to come in here together, and he's getting a little angry waiting because he says Andy Roach don't like to wait. So we have Uncle Jesse's truck. His white truck is parked right here, and the Duke boys make the left and pull into this spot. Of course, hopping out the window because the doors don't open, and they walk in here, and it all looks exactly the same. You can match up the boys walking right up these steps. Camera shot goes right up here, and it's actually different doors. On the episode they were glass doors, but this railing was here. You can definitely see that in the shot, and you see Bo, Luke, and Uncle Jesse up here opening up this door, and then they notice that there's the sign for the $20,000 contest where they're looking for an alternative to fossil fuels. And Bo looks at it and he's like, hey, we could do this. Jesse said, not unless you can invent a combustible engine with hot air. Laughs and goes walking inside because they have a meeting with the revenue agent upstairs. So they have their meeting up there in that office, and to their surprise when they walk in, it's no longer Andy Roach as the revenue agent. It's the woman that was working underneath him has now been promoted. And when they come in, they say that they're here to do their quarterly check-in. They have a deal with the government, so she starts looking it up, and she's appalled to see that they have made a deal with the Duke boys. As long as Uncle Jesse doesn't make moonshine, they can stay out of prison. Now, while they're up there having that meeting, Uncle Jesse explains that, you know, they agreed that they wouldn't make any moonshine to keep the boys out of jail, and she says that, you know, I would have never made that deal. And he said, well, regardless, we made the deal, and we're just checking in. So they start to leave, and Roscoe walks in and says that he noticed that they had a taillight out and that they better not try and move that vehicle 1 inch without that taillight working, or else he's going to cite them for it, and he's going to take away their license. Pretty reactionary, if you ask me. But he also tells her that, you know, he's convinced that they are still making moonshine because he thinks everybody's guilty of something. And she says, you know, if they're making moonshine, I'll catch them. And they look out the window, and they happen to see the guys out here with Cooter and Jesse. So Cooter is actually underneath the General Lee down here. You can't really see him, but Jesse is putting some groceries in the back of his pickup truck right there. And Cooter scares him, and he says that he's out here fixing the taillight, which is crazy if you think about it, because I mean, this is just within, you know, like 10-15 minutes it seems like of when they were just upstairs. So this was before cell phones or anything. How did they contact Cooter to come out and fix that for him? But he's fixing it for him, and the boys come out here, and they have a ton of copper tubing, and they just say, well, we found it. You normally can't find this stuff, so we bought every bit they had. And Cooter said, what are you going to do with this? He said, I don't know, but it's always good to have it. So Roscoe and the revenue agent are up there looking out that window down to see them having that conversation, and that's when Roscoe says, why else would they have that copper tubing if they're not going to be moonshine? And she basically sends him on his way, but it gets her thinking, and she will eventually go out and start spying on them at the Duke farm, see what they're up to. Because of the type of lens they're using, everything behind them is a little bit closer. So here you can see these buildings off to the side when Uncle Jesse is talking to Cooter and he's first walking out. And right over here, this building on the other side of this one with the columns, that would have been the car dealership you see in the background. And while they're talking about the copper tubing out here, you can see those buildings over there, but you can't really see what the names are now because the trees have overgrown, but you can see that exact shot over their shoulder. Look at that, Bo Duke has a little placard here, so you know that probably the others do too, or you would hope, right? There's Luke Duke.
Here we go.
And right in front of our next destination is Burt Reynolds and Cannonball Run. So this is actually in the episode, but you only see the inside because this is the jail. This is when they are supposedly being brought in by the revenue agent, but Roscoe pulls them all over, arrests the revenue agent with them, and Enos is supposed to bring him here to jail when the boys do a switcheroo, and Enos and the revenue agent end up in jail, and the guys threaten to light the moonshine on fire, and they end up breaking the glass with the liquid in there and dropping the match, and that's when they realize that it's water. So the Duke boys steal the sheriff's car and head out to do a ruse so Jesse can get the moonshine off to the environmental protection. And before we head out, I'll show you a couple of the more of the famous names on the walk out here. Oh, look at this classic. The Prize Fighter, Tim Conway and Don Knotts, 1979. Didn't know that was filmed here either. I love that old pharmacy sign over here. I never watched I'll Fly Away, so I didn't see that episode. They also filmed Dennis Quaid in Footloose here, and In the Heat of the Night. All right, we're gonna head out to our next memorable location. I can't wait to see this one. I see a train. Should we try and jump it? Should we? Should we? Are you kidding? Not in my car. Not in a car made nowadays. Heck no. Well, now that it's been stopped here for about 5 minutes, I'm kind of wishing maybe I would have tried to jump it. I'm kidding out there, kids. You're going the wrong way! Somebody tell him you're going the wrong way! I don't think anybody's telling him. I feel like I'm on candid camera. Somebody told him, but come on, man, get it together. You think the Dukes would have put up with this? Here we go again. This is unbelievable. Back and forth, back and forth. After about the 4th time that train went back and forth like that, I finally turned around and went and found an alternative route. I wasn't sure when it was ever going to end. I was there for close to 15 minutes. We are headed out to the Boar's Nest. There it is. It is a far cry from being the Boar's Nest now, because now it's a church. And bless them for giving it a use so that it still stands. Let's go take a closer look. Now, unfortunately, in this episode, you really only see that little section right there. But in other episodes, you get a full range of this place, and it really hasn't changed too much. It looks like the ground was raised a little bit, but this section right here would have been where the gas pump was originally, where Brody works. And in this episode, we really see it from this angle because the Duke boys and Jesse are parked over here, and they're trying to get gas during the gas crisis. And so Brody's telling them, I can only give you 3 gallons, Jesse. And Jesse says, I used to turn you over my knee and spank you when you were a kid. You want me to do it again? He says, I'm sorry, we only get the gas truck coming once a week instead of every day now, so I can only give you 3 gallons. So right then, out of this door, and I'll show you how much it's changed. Basically the way it was at the time of filming, the door, that would have been where it was technically, but they had like a little, like an outer box right there. So the doorway that everybody always came out of was actually on the side. And that's where it would have said Best Barbecue and all that on there. But we see Boss Hogg come walking out of here, and he's holding that piece of paper that says the $20,000 contest. And he sees Jesse out here, and he starts talking to Jesse and saying, do you remember when we used to run moonshine? He said, that time I ran out of fuel, you poured some of that moonshine in my car and it made it go. And so Boss is basically trying to talk Jesse into going back into the moonshining business. So Jesse, of course, says he doesn't want to do it because he made a deal with the government and that deal keeps his boys out of jail. But Boss Hogg, and plus he says, you know, I don't care about $20,000. And Boss says, oh, me either, but I want the royals. And Luke figures out he's talking about the royalties. Boss wants every time somebody uses this as a new fuel, as an alternate fuel, that they will get a kickback, a royalty from it. And so that's what Boss really wants. So he gets the wheels spinning for Jesse, basically saying, hey, you're a patriot if you do this. You'll get the remove the smog from the air for the kids, and you'll be helping everybody, and you'll get us off of the needing the gas from over in Arabia. He calls them Arabs. I was trying not to, but that's what he says. And he tells Brody, he says, now go ahead and fill up my new partner's vehicle. And he says, boss, I ain't going into business with you. But he plants that seed, and he thinks he knows, Boss thinks he knows that Uncle Jesse is going to start doing it, which that's basically what happens. Uncle Jesse decides that he's gonna start working on that, and Enos is the one that ends up cluing everyone in as to what's really going on. Because we actually have two scenes here. Once the revenue agent has been out there and been in that costume and everything, and she gets caught by the boys spying on him, they talk her into going out juking. And so she had never been before, and this is where Daisy works. And it's actually kind of funny, I mean, because in the pilot episode, when you're introduced to this place, Daisy is waiting tables, and like Bo comes up, wraps his arm around her, and like gives her a kiss or whatever, and says, if you weren't my cousin, or if we weren't related, you'd be my girl. And she goes, that never stopped anybody in this family before. But anyway, they bring her out here juking because they're gonna get her drunk. And the reason they're trying to get her drunk is because they want her to pass out so Jesse and Cooter can keep making a batch of moonshine and trying it out. And while they're inside here, Bo is putting the moves on her, getting her drunk. Daisy's serving Bo the water and serving her the moonshine. So it's too bad we can't get in and look around. I'd love to just look around because I'd like to see those poles throughout the dance floor. You can see like the structural poles in there, and I would have just loved to seen that, because you always see Daisy serving tables, walking around it, or like I said, them dancing. But also inside of here is where Boss's office is. So this is when Boss is telling Roscoe that he wants them to get back into making the moonshine. And Roscoe thinks it's so he can bust him. He says, no, I don't want you to bust him yet. He goes, he basically tells him that Jesse's his partner, but he thinks Jesse's being greedy and isn't gonna cut him in, keep all the royalties to himself. So he wants Roscoe eventually to set up those roadblocks, and they're gonna search Jesse's car for the moonshine. They know he's gonna have it hidden in there. Now, a cool little backstory to the Boar's Nest. When they started this TV show, they wanted Waylon Jennings to be the balladeer. They wanted him to do the narration throughout each episode, and even eventually were willing to work around his schedule, let him record the stuff and then send it in. But they had him doing the theme song, the Good Old Boys theme song, and one of Waylon's requests was, when he found out what it was about and everything, and that this would exist in here, this barbecue pit slash gas station slash bar slash dance hall slash music venue, all wrapped into one, Waylon requested that they call it the Boar's Nest because when he was in Nashville struggling with a lot of the old country guys in the 60s, there was a woman named Sue Brewer who worked at George Jones' honky tonk, and after hours she would let all these guys come to her house, crash on her floor if they had nowhere to go, or if they just didn't want to call it a night, they could go back to her house, and they would all play songs and write songs, and they'd have a round table, and you never knew who was all going to be there, but you'd go in there, and if you had a new song, you'd play it for the people around there, and they'd either tell you if it was a good song or a bad song, or if you needed to change something. It was just a really great environment, and Waylon wanted it remembered. Sue Brewer's house became the Boar's Nest, and that's why he ended up having them call it the Boar's Nest. I was probably more excited to come out and see this than any other location today. I really, really loved this show when I was a kid. Just to think those old gas pumps would have been there. Well, they've completely redeveloped this area since the days of filming, but this is actually the location where the Duke family house was. The Duke Ranch. And we don't really see the house in the episode. What we see is them out in the woods where Uncle Jesse has his hidden moonshine still. Because even though he's agreed not to do it to keep the boys off of, or out of jail, old Boss Hogg's got him thinking he could be making that moonshine and using it for some of the fossil fuel contest. So they're out here with the moonshine still and everything, and they're trying to get it working again. And as they're out here doing it with Cooter, the revenue agent comes out, and she's all dressed up in a disguise, trying to spy on them and see if they are in fact making moonshine, which they are. You hear a big blast while they're out here, but they did film it all out here. Unfortunately, it's just no longer here. And the land agent or the revenue agent, she sets off their little tripwire, and they go catch her, and basically she thinks that she's caught him, but when she smells the moonshine, she completely passes out, and Jesse says that stuff would knock out a grizzly bear. So while she's knocked out, they pour out all the moonshine, all the evidence, and Jesse tells him, what you gotta do is entertain her tonight. So they gonna take her out. They decide here, they tell her they're gonna take her out juking, and they're gonna go out to the boar's nest and party with her, get her all drunk so she'll pass out, and Uncle Jesse and Cooter can run off another batch of the moonshine. Fighting the system like two modern day Robin Hoods. We're gonna pretend we're in Jesse's moonshine runner, and we're headed to where we know there's gonna be a roadblock. This is where it all happened. So this intersection right here is where they set up that roadblock. Roscoe would have had his sheriff car right here, and the other one right over here, and Boss Hogg would have been parked in his convertible waiting right there. And right up here at this stop is where they stop Uncle Jesse, and they tell him to pull it over. Tells the sheriff guys to take the whole thing apart. So Jesse brings his car right around the corner, and right here on the side is where they disassemble that whole thing. And Jesse watches. You see they got the seats out, they got everything out, they got basically tore the whole thing apart. Jesse, your car looks like it's running a little low, meaning like low to the ground, like it's heavy full of stuff. But what he didn't realize was he was a little too accurate when he said low, because since Jesse was running his car on this stuff, once he would siphon it out in the scene where they're with the environmental protection, he leaves just enough gas in there, or just enough moonshine in there to run the car to hopefully get him home, but that's what ends up sending him out on a chase. So they disassemble the whole car, can't find where that moonshine would be, and then they tell him, okay, you can go. And Jesse says, I want my car put back exactly the way it was, since you didn't find anything hidden in there. And he says, if you don't, I'll sue the county. So Roscoe has them put it all back together, and as they're doing all this, we see the sheriff car that the Duke boys have borrowed from Enos. It comes right along here and passes this whole mess, drives right around, gets a signal from Jesse, and they take off down that road. And Boss Hogg really thinks he's done it this time. He really thinks he outsmarted everybody, but wait till he finds out what happens when he gets to putting that stuff inside the engine. Well, here's our next location, Piedmont Rockdale Hospital in Conyers. This is where the Department of the Environmental Protection is. So, as we know, Boss Hogg has started this whole thing by getting Uncle Jesse to get back in the moonshining business, and once Roscoe has confiscated what he thinks is the moonshine, gives it to Boss. Boss drove out here, and this is where they're holding the contest for that $20,000. Now it's changed a little bit. All these pillars weren't here in the middle. That one they've changed all the pillars, but there was one right there. But everything else pretty much matches up. Boss parks his car right here, that convertible, and they go in there and they pour that liquid into the engine and nothing happens. And Boss says, your engine's broken. You got a bad engine. And the guy says, no, there's nothing wrong with the engine. And Uncle Jesse comes walking in and he's got another bottle. And what we find out is they had duped Roscoe, they had duped Boss Hogg. Those bottles that they had were water. And so Jesse has, we find out, has basically put the moonshine that is going to be used as this fossil fuel. He was driving his car on it, so he siphons it out, takes it in there, and they put it in an engine, and it does work. Believe it or not, it does work. And they ask him what it's made out of, and he says moonshine. So they say they're gonna have to take it to Washington and go test it and make sure that it's environmentally sound and that it's clean burning, and it's that they can make more of it if they have to. Even from this angle, you can see that building that's up here. You can see all that in the shot when Boss is pulling up in here. So they tell him that they are gonna have to test all this before they can give him his money, and Jesse basically just gets mad and says this is a rip-off and storms out. So Boss never gets his royals. But after this scene, they all realize, the revenue agent and Roscoe and Boss, they all realized that Jesse had been driving his moonshining car on that moonshine, and that's why they couldn't find it. So a chase ensues, and eventually when they try to pull him over, the guys keep going. Jesse keeps driving that car with Bo and Luke in there, and eventually they run out of fuel. And when they try to arrest him, they say, well, what are you gonna arrest us for? Because your gas tank is full of moonshine. We just run out. And the revenue agent lady goes down, sniffs it, and faints because of how strong it is. And Jesse said, if you want to keep being a revenue agent, you're gonna have to learn not to do things like that. I saw this barn out here and it made me think of one of the chase scenes at the end of the episode where Roscoe and the revenue agent are chasing Jesse and the boys, and he looks in the rearview mirror, Jesse does, and he says, I think this is where she loses them, boys. And you see Roscoe's car veer off and flip over, and she continues to chase him down the street, and he says, she's a pretty fair road driver. See how she does on dirt. And he takes a turn, twists and turns going up dirt roads, and she's still keeping up. And he says, she keeps this up, I'll have to give her one of my Jesse Duke barn shots. And next thing you know, Jesse goes driving through the middle of a barn, and she goes flying through the other side of the barn, and the whole barn falls down afterward. What a great shot. This barn shot worked in 33. I hope it works now. All right, my friends, we're gonna call it a day. I hope you enjoyed this vlog. I loved it. I loved Dukes of Hazzard when I was a kid. I couldn't get enough of it. It was action, it was funny, had, you know, everything that you liked. A guy with a beard who was like funny like Santa Claus. You had a beautiful woman, you had a blonde-haired guy, a brunette-haired guy, and they were doing crazy stuff, jumping cars, sliding across hoods of cars, going in and out of the windows because the doors didn't close or open. Just a great show, and I'm glad that I got to come out and do one of the filming locations for one of the episodes today. Thank you all for watching. We'll see you all next time. Have a great night, and yeehaw!